Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Thursday, May 1st, 2025, and today we're going to talk about which seeder to use for which crop, or which seeders in general, keeping a farmer's market tent where you put it, and we discuss an intriguing question about what it would take to convert a commercial greenhouse operation into a in-ground market garden operation. So let's do it. Hey, so I'm out in my field, and you may remember this story where I grew out some garlic from California, and most of it died, while the rest of my Kentucky garlic thrived. And so for the last 2 years, I've been growing out what survived, and it still looks pretty rough. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it's kind of yellowing already. It's way too early for that. Especially, now I'm going to show you, if you're watching on YouTube, what our music looks like. This is our elephant garlic. It's doing fine. And this is our music garlic. It is happy and healthy. Nice, lush green. So it's just interesting to see how, like, when you think about buying seeds, how much where it comes from could have an effect on the quality and yield of those plants. So anyway, long story short, make sure to buy your garlic from someone local. Yep. All right. Well, welcome to Thursday, everyone, and welcome to May. How about that? I hope your weeks and springs are going swell so far and that your April was a success. Yesterday, I washed and packed some veggies for a client and then delivered those and then came back and promptly tweaked my back somehow. So that was fun. It's feeling better today, and it's honestly been a while since I did something like that. So I feel mostly good about how I've been managing my back problems, but back pain is breathtaking and not super fun. So I did a lot of laying down yesterday afternoon. Had some Champions League action to entertain me, so it wasn't a total loss. But the plan was to trellis the grafted tomatoes to keep the scions off the ground and prevent them from rooting. That didn't happen, but there is always today. Anyway, more on trellis stuff probably next week. In fact, for now, as is our pseudo tradition on Thursdays, especially in the spring when the questions are plenty, I try to get a little caught up on your all's Patreon questions. So today's first Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Adam Van Queek, who asks, quote, I noticed you use both the Jang seeder and the Earthway seeder. Do you use each seeder for certain crops? Which of the two seeders would be worth the initial investment for new farmers? Also, when you have participated in farmers markets, how did you keep your canopy from blowing away from the high winds? End quote. Okay, so both great questions here. I think what I will do with these questions is actually take them both separately, because there is a lot to say about each, and certainly enough on tents for its own segment. So we'll save that for segment 2. Let's start with the question about the seeders. Indeed, we use both the Jang seeder and the Earthway seeder on our farm. The Earthway is a simple push seeder listed at just under like $170 right now, and it looks like it comes with about 7 plates with options of buying a few more for like $50. So for under $225, you can get the whole shebang. The Jang seeder, the JP1, by contrast, is currently listed at $479 and comes with 6 rollers. Additional rollers are about $30 a piece, so the investment is about double. Now, the Jang is a precision seeder and singulates seeds really well. Singulate being a word I don't think is really recognized by most or maybe any dictionaries, but growers use it to mean drop one seed at a time. And it can be very, very efficient. If you plan on doing a substantial amount of seeding, the Jang is a great and efficient tool, and it is kind of a must-have for most commercial production where seeding is a big priority. I love it, especially with the double disc opener attachment. It's very fast. It puts seeds down really evenly. However, the Earthway is a great tool for the price, and most commercial growers I know at very least have one for larger seeds like cover crops and beans and peas and that sort of stuff. I know that Daniel Mays of Frith Farm has talked a lot about using his Earthway for everything for years. It is a very simple and straightforward tool. I have very few issues with it. It has some limitations in terms of planting density, and it will literally crush certain seeds, namely pelleted seeds. But with enough practice and the right seeds, it is a totally usable tool. For beginners, there is no shame in starting with an Earthway for everything, and it can save you a few $100 out of the gate while you learn what the market needs and what its limitations are for your particular production. Start with a simple tool like the Earthway and do as much as you can with it.
And that will help you to better understand what you may or may not be missing out on with something like more sophisticated like the Jang or some other cedar. Now, speaking of, there are other cedars out there as well, like the 4-row pinpoint cedar or the 6-row pinpoint cedar. These require much better bed preparation than the Jang and the Earthway to be effective, but for baby greens and other crops, these pinpoint cedars are really nice cedars. There cannot be any trashiness to the bed for them to work, and it must be firmed in like with a bed roller, something just roll over top of it, make it nice and flat and firm to have the greatest efficacy with those pinpoint cedars. I've also used the Haas, and it's a fine cedar as well. It does come with a double disc on its own. Just you have to buy the double disc for the Jang. This one comes with it, which is nice. But I just don't love the hopper. It's a little finicky, and it takes a little while to switch them out. There are also versions of the Jang with multiple hoppers, the JP3, the JP5, and JP6, the number denoting how many hoppers, thus the number of rows it will plant at a time. JP6 does 6. But again, unless you are doing a lot of direct seeding, those are probably overkill for most of you, especially at that price. And Earthway is a nice step up from just hand seeding, and you can always decide later if that's tool enough for you. Anyway, I hope that helps answer question number 1 here, Adam. We'll tackle the second part of your question in segment 2, BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Ring of Fire. What if you could turn your brush problem into black gold? The Ring of Fire biochar kiln is your spring tool for soil transformation, converting woody debris into high-quality biochar in just hours. Biochar will kickstart your compost, retain water and nutrients in your soil, and provide habitat for beneficial microbes. Now $19.95 with flat rate shipping. Their spring sale runs through June. Don't wait to boost your soil and optimize your inputs. Visit ringofire.earth/growers now to learn more. Also, for more information on biochar, check out the No-Till Market Garden podcast interview with Kelpie Wilson, inventor of the Ring of Fire kiln, that we will link in the show notes. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's second Patreon question also comes from Patreon member Adam Van Keeker. Sorry, Adam. Not doing the best job on your name, who you will remember asked, quote, when you have participated in farmers markets, how did you keep your canopy from blowing away from high winds? End quote. This is a great question. And the reason it deserves more than just a quick answer is because there are a few different things to think about when it comes to tents. And it actually starts with purchasing of the tent itself. It's tempting to skimp on the tent when you're just starting out, but it's also risky. This is something, depending on the number of markets you plan on doing, that you will be putting up and taking down, depending on your season, as many as 40, 80 times or more in a year. In the course of a few years, that could be hundreds and hundreds of times. The tent that we use now, which admittedly needs a new canopy, is 6 years old and has been used countless times over the years. The brand is Eurmax, EURMAX, like Euro, but just Euro. And is not only sturdy, but somewhat heavier than your average like Walmart tent, which is the first step to answering your question. A good tent will help with the wind a lot. Cheap tent could just flatten or break in a heavy wind gust, or certainly just blow away. You can also use sandbags with the tent, or maybe they come with it, I don't remember. And then you can fill those bags, but small sandbags alone will not be good enough to hold the whole tent down. What we were doing when we were doing farmers markets is use 2 large cinder blocks in the front, as well as tie the tent down to the front tables, which themselves were heavy from produce. Some folks will also fill small buckets with concrete and use those in place of cinder blocks. Doesn't really matter what you use, heavy is what you're after. Now, these can be tripping hazards, of course, so you need to make sure anything like blocks or whatever that you use are not in a place where people are going to trip on them, usually tucked behind our farm sign and or under the table itself. In the back of the tent, at one market at least, where we were allowed to keep our van nearby, we would tie the tent down to the van. That did 2 things. One, it kept the strings out of our way when we were going in and out of the van to get stuff, and the van wasn't going anywhere. If the van blew away, we probably had bigger problems, like an attack from a supervillain, probably Magneto. Additionally, we would often tie our tents to our neighbors' tents if they were friends of ours for windy days. I like doing this where possible because it also meant that we were getting a little bonus shade from each other. The way the better tents are designed, they can also flex a little bit in the wind. If they're too stiff, they are more likely to turn into parachutes, which is the opposite of what you want. Last thing I'll say is that you should get farmers market insurance as well, because I have seen more than a few tents blowing down the market in my day, typically the cheap ones. And if those were to hit someone, that would be not only horrible, but also could result in a lawsuit. So lock your tent down and also your liability. Some farmers markets also just require that. So it's good to do either way. I've been at some farmers markets, especially in the spring, where things got a little hairy. So take the wind seriously, as it sounds like Adam is here. Great questions, and we will get one more from another Patreon member when we return, which is about converting a commercial greenhouse. It's a very interesting question. I'll give my thoughts and be curious what you all have to say. Be right back.
Tell me, babe, where are you going? Prairie wind goes on blowing. Tumbleweed shadow, I'm tied to you. Tell me, babe, what are we gonna do?
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. I started a CSA to grow food and build community, not to drown in admin work. Spreadsheets, emails, and pack lists take up too much time. If I could spend less time at my desk and more in the field, that'd be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand automates billing, newsletters, websites, and member support, saving CSA farmers 20 plus hours a week. Focus on farming, not paperwork. See how Farmhand can help. Book a one-on-one demo with founder Ari at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by FarmRaise. Still using QuickBooks for your farm's bookkeeping? You're wasting time and losing money. Farm finances can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. FarmRaise Tracks is the all-in-one tool built just for farmers. Manage expenses, prep for taxes, run payroll, and plan for the future without spreadsheets or stress. Just clear, organized insights to keep your operation thriving. Thousands of farmers trust Trax to make smart financial decisions all year long. It's time you did too. Use code NOTIL20, that's all caps, no spaces, NOTIL20 for 20% off the life of your membership at farmraise.com. All right, back to the show. All right, our third and final Patreon question of this Thursday comes to us from Joe Naaman Sessions, who writes, quote, "Hey, Jesse, so I just started a part-time gig at the largest nursery in my state, and boy, has it been enlightening. I have had access to the owner of 45 years, and he has helped me to understand the current cost of a high-tech nursery space and things to be aware of when it comes to older nursery spaces. In my city, there is a 4-acre parcel for sale that once housed a community-loved retail nursery that has multiple outbuildings, but perhaps more importantly, a 6-bay gutter connect greenhouse that measures 180 feet wide by 200 feet long and 3 other tunnels that are not connected to the main structure. The greenhouses have not been in use for about 6 years, and 3 of them were reskinned last year. Being above the 46th parallel, this is a very intriguing opportunity. I am curious what you would be on the lookout for if considering converting a once commercial greenhouse to an in-ground operation," end quote. Okay, Joe, what a fun hypothetical. This is an intriguing opportunity for you as well. I guess I would start with some questions about what is currently on the ground there. If it was a commercial greenhouse where people came to shop for plants, I typically associate those with concrete or brick floors or something really hard like that, which obviously is going to be your biggest first obstacle to get the floor pulled up, followed by addressing an enormous amount of compaction in the native soil. Now, it's also possible that if it was merely a plant nursery growing starts for bigger growers, that the floors are landscape fabric or something similar, in which case the compaction would be there, but perhaps not as difficult of a removal of the actual fabric. I'm assuming that you've already assessed that, though, and whatever is there does not feel like an obstacle, but of course, that's where my first concern would be, dealing with the floor and the compaction. Another potential concern of mine would be the buildup of nutrients and or potential chemicals in the soil. Now, this may not be an issue if the floor was concrete and had drains, but if it was not and was mostly permeable and the level of nutrient buildup beneath the soil could make things a little wonky. Maybe not. Of course, you'd have to check with a test and consult with an agronomist, but if they were regularly feeding plants different fertilizers and cleaning the floors with various chemicals, etc., then things could get weird. Beyond those few not so small issues, however, I don't know that I have any immediate concerns with this idea. I suppose it could be nice to know what was there before the nursery in case there might be a risk of like lead, but you could always test for that as well. Also, I see some potential in using space like that for something other than in-ground growing or running a plant nursery. You could build tables and run a ton of microgreens greens and baby greens from a space like that. Maybe there's a hybrid hydroponic soil setup you could install that might make sense. Either way, it sounds like a cool and certainly intriguing operation, especially if those structures are still in decent shape. That, in fact, might also be something to pay special attention to, the state of those large, high tunnels that might have significant costs down the line, especially if there's like heating and that sort of stuff involved. Really investigate that. Anyway, I hope that's at least a little bit helpful, and maybe someone in the comments will have an experience with something similar to that. Otherwise, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Don't forget, we are now officially a 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out. We very much appreciate that. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you've ever thought that sounds like fun to sponsor a show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and the team at No Till Growers for their support. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Assuming Mike picked some background music, otherwise I just look ridiculous. Pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook or the Seed Farmer at no-tillgrowers.com to support our work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of May, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Mags and Greg, two one-namers who came in to rescue this week's story, which is important because, in this case, Greg and Mags, they're all done with their garden shift for the day. They've got the garden island all squared away, and they're rowing back to shore where protests, per usual, await them. And this will all make sense if you've listened to the story this week. But anyway, they, Greg and Mags are on their way to the shore, and they're almost there when they realize that they think they left the irrigation on. Like, who hasn't done that? We've all done it. So they have to turn around. They have to row back to Garden Island. And so they row back, and when they get there, they see two small humans, pale as can be, stuffing tomatoes into a container. And when they spot the gardeners, one of them dives back into the water and disappears, but the other gets snagged on a bed marking stake that's at the end of the bed, to mark the rows, and falls over, hitting its head on the sandbag and going unconscious. The gardeners, stunned of course, and unsure of what to do, decide to go check on the small tomato thief. And those lake inhabitants, for their part, decide to come retrieve their fallen member. That is for tomorrow on The War of Garden Island? ? All right. Thanks for watching and or listening. We will see you tomorrow for Friday. Bye. Can I help you?